right, joining me now, the parish president of Terrebonne Parish, Gordon Dove. And Mr. Dove, a big day here in Terrebonne Parish. Senator John Kennedy about to arrive here at Copeland's, and I mean, just so many different topics to talk about in the nation today, but you've had a pretty long-standing relationship with the senator, and what's he like when you really get to know him behind closed doors?
You know, he stands up for his principles and the principles of the people of Louisiana, and especially Terrebonne Parish, Lafourche. And you know, I've worked with him for a couple of decades, and he's great to work with. He believes in our coastal restoration, hurricane protection, has been there every step of the way, along with crime. And you know, he says what he believes, and he does what he believes, and he votes that way.
Let me ask you this. We have so much talk about the election in 3 weeks. What's the tick? What do you think is going to happen? Are you optimistic that the Republicans will take over, or are you a little skeptical about some of the polls?
Well, Martin, the Republicans will definitely take over the House, and I believe they're going to take over the Senate by 1, if not 2. So, you know, it's very crucial for Louisiana and the United States that we get Washington back on the right track.
Yeah. How important is it to have a guy like Senator Kennedy? You see him all over national news. He's made himself pretty transparent, but he's gained a lot of popularity with Sean Hannity and people of that nature. So obviously, they love to get him on. He's pretty colorful at the same time.
Well, Martin, he says what he means, and he means what he says. And, you know, I've always been a supporter, and you know, he represents Terrebonne Parish, and it's a great thing having him, and he's helped us, you know, with our coastal restoration efforts many times.
Yeah, matter of fact, here's the senator walking in right now. There he is, Senator Kennedy. How are you?
I'm great, man.
You doing okay?
Hey guys.
The senator addressed a packed house here at Copeland's, and it was an eager crowd ready to hear him speak. A lot of people see him on national TV, and he's been getting a lot of airtime on Fox and other channels, but they wanted to hear him in person. Let's listen in to some of his talk with the people here at Copeland's.
How do you like my commercials? Yeah. I'm mad too. Well, that's good, because they were damned expensive, I can tell you that. We're going up with I think a new commercial either tomorrow or the next day, and we'll be up for a week, and then we're going up with one on that you're going to love on President Biden, and then we'll go up with a closer after that. The election's 3 weeks from today. We're doing great. Thanks to all of you. We've been up on TV for, I don't know, a month, I guess, and we're obviously going to stay up until Election Day. We're also up, I don't understand all the new forms of communication, but we're all over social media and cable and Hulu and Netflix and Wooloo and all of those. And we try to run commercials during the Saints games and during football games as well. Our numbers are great. I'm obviously would like to win the election in the first primary. Now that's hard because, you know, in Louisiana we like to run for office, and I've got it only costs $900 in Louisiana to put your name on the ballot. And I think it's great. People want to spend $900 to see their name. It's a free country. In Arkansas, for example, it costs $25,000 to get your name on the ballot. I don't support a system like that. I think competition makes all of us better, and if you want to run, by God, you ought to run. But the point is, I've got 11 opponents. Only really 3, myself included, 4 are campaigning doing any campaigning at all. That's better than last time. Last time when I ran, I had 24 opponents. But so it's hard to win it in the first primary. But so far we are. And but if we have a runoff, we're ready for the runoff too. We have worked really hard and to raise the resources. I've never worked so hard in my life. We've set a record for fundraising in Louisiana. I checked before we came over. As of this morning, we had raised $37 million. And I've raised that, most of it from Louisiana, but frankly all over the country. And my goal is nobody's going to outwork me. Nobody's going to outwork me. I think before the election's over, we'll probably set another record with about $40 million. So we're ready. By God, if somebody wants to come in, I'm not talking about anybody else. I'm playing against par, talking about my record. That's all I want to talk about. But if somebody wants to say something about my mama, by God, I'm going to respond. And I will make them famous. Let me say a word about the national landscape. And let me set the tone by saying, as you've heard me say before, I don't hate anybody. I don't. I don't believe in this cancel culture. This is America. You're not free if you can't say what you think. You're not free if you can't express yourself. So everybody is entitled to their opinion. I'm entitled to mine, though. And as you probably have figured out, I have the right to remain silent, but I don't have the ability. And I share my opinion. And if people disagree with me, that is just fine. But here's my opinion. Republicans aren't perfect, but the other side is crazy. As bad as Washington looks from the outside, you ought to see it from the inside. If the aliens landed in Washington, D.C. tomorrow and said, "Take me to your leader," it would be embarrassing. I mean, I don't hate the president. I really don't. He's a nice guy. But, and I say this with respect, but he has screwed things up so bad. He has mismanaged Congress. He's mismanaged COVID. He's mismanaged the border. He's mismanaged crime. He's mismanaged America's energy independence. He's mismanaged Afghanistan. He's mismanaged the economy. And oh Lord, has he mismanaged inflation. Yes. I don't like to I was telling a group earlier this morning giving a speech, I don't like to brag about the expensive places I've been. But the night before last, I went to the grocery store. I mean, inflation is gutting the American people like a fish. Like a fish, and they deserve better. And President Biden and his team don't have any plan except to spend more money and watch inflation rise. I swear to God, if you put the Biden administration in charge of the Sahara Desert, they'd run out of sand. I want you to think back, but let me say a word about the national environment, because as I was saying, as bad as it looks from the outside, you ought to see it from the inside. And I have tried to reason with these people, and I wish I could tell you there was middle ground with them, but there's not. The water in Washington, D.C., is not going to clear up until we get the pigs out of the creek. It's just that simple. And the only place we're going to find sanity, the only place we're going to find cheaper food prices and cheaper gas prices and a return to the American dream is in the voting booth. It's just that simple. Now, these elections nationwide are going to be close. That's not a news flash. In the so-called battleground states, the ones that you know, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. These are Wisconsin. Did I mention Wisconsin? Yes. These are purple states. They're pretty much 50-50. And I'm not an expert at many things, if any, but I know how to read a poll. And I know which polls to read. And we, in every battleground state, we are either ahead or behind at most by 2 points, based on the polling today. Now, you wouldn't believe that if you read some of the news reports, okay? I mean, but think about back 2 years ago. 2 years ago, many members of the national media, the agenda journalists, they had Susan Collins beat in Maine. They had Mitch McConnell beat. They had Tom Tillis beat. They had Steve Daines beat. They had Lindsey Graham getting beat by 12 points in South Carolina. And we won every single one of those races. These elections are going to be determined on voter intensity. Whoever goes out to vote, gets their people out to vote in these battleground states is going to win. And our voter intensity is higher than theirs. But you got to go vote. If dead people can vote, you can do it too.
We just can't vote twice.
Say what?
We just can't vote twice.
That's right. Don't vote twice. But we are doing great. Let me end this way, because I want to save my voice for tomorrow, as long as I can. When I ran for this job, can I put this here? When I ran for this job, I promised you two things. I said, first, I will always represent your values in Washington, D.C. And that's what I try to do. I try to vote the way I think the majority of the people in Louisiana would vote if they had the information that I had. And the second thing that I promised you was that I would never lie to you. And I won't. Until you tell me to come home, I'm going to represent your values in Washington, D.C., and I'm going to tell you the truth. And here's the truth. I believe that our future, and by our I mean America's future and Louisiana's future, can be better than our present or our past. I believe that all of us together as Louisianians, we're only as good as our dreams, and we're only as valuable as our children. But what you allow is what will continue. Now, I love this country and I love this state as much as you do. And I think both of them are worth fighting for. I can't promise you I'm going to win every fight. I can't. But I'll promise you this. Until you tell me to come home, by God, I will always refuse to be beaten. Thank you for coming out. Thank you so much.
And he also fielded some questions from the audience.
We love you. We love Cajun country loves John Kennedy.
Well, I love you right back.
We want to know, have you watched 2,000 Mules?
Have I watched what?
The 2,000 Mules.
No, I haven't. I haven't. You know, I've heard about it, but I haven't done anything since we adjourned Congress 3 weeks ago except
So a lot
campaign.
of us have concerns that
But-
how we know this one's going to be free.
Well, let me,
this election is going to be okay.
Boy, that's a great question. Let me tell you about this election. We need to do 2 things to restore confidence in our electoral system. And I say this to my Republican friends, and I say this to my Democratic friends, and I say this to my independent friends. 2 rules, non-negotiable, sacrosanct. Number 1, we've got to go back to having an election day, not an election month. Now, if you want to vote by mail, that's fine with me. If the legislature says it's okay. If you want to vote early, that's fine by me. You can do that in Louisiana. But however you vote, the votes have got to be tallied by election night. Because when these elections run on for months and weeks, whoever loses it automatically creates suspicion. That's the first rule. Second rule, you have to prove you are who you say you are in order to vote. Now, President Biden and Senator Houma and my Democratic opponents in the Senate race both support this idea. They tried to pass a bill to have a federal election code, to have the federal government take over the elections from the states. What could possibly go wrong? And one of the things they want to do is change the rules about proving who you are on election day to vote. The second thing they want to do, they're just fine with having an election month. And we have defeated that bill repeatedly in the United States Congress, and we're going to keep doing it. What else? Yes, sir.
Who is pulling Biden's strings in Washington? Because listen to what I say. He's too stupid to be that stupid by himself.
I might want to write that one down.
You can use
Look, let me say it again. I have met President Biden. I've spent time with President Biden. I do not hate President Biden. I don't hate anybody. I don't. When I say my prayers, and I say them often, one of the things I ask God is, God, please don't let me hate. Don't let me hate. And it's hard in Washington, D.C. Believe me. There are days that I get up in my overpriced Capitol Hill apartment to walk over to the Capitol, and I say to myself, Kennedy, today you're going to follow Jesus.
Amen.
And by 10 o'clock, I want to follow Jesus and slap somebody. But I refuse to hate anybody. And I look for grace wherever I can find it. But the job of President of the United States is too big for President Biden. That is just a fact. And who's the President of the United States? Whoever has control of that teleprompter. If President Biden asked me today for advice, I would tell him first, I'd say, Mr. President, just forget about the teleprompter. Just go out in front of the American people and answer their questions. Explain to them why forfeiting America's energy independence has made our world better. Because it hasn't. America, President Biden in 18 months, and all of my opponents in this race, the Democrats, they support everything he's done. Okay, they support everything he's done. I didn't think it was humanly possible in 18 months for us to forfeit our energy independence. We can produce enough oil and gas to satisfy all of our needs and have some left over to help our friends in Europe. If the President of the United States would let us. And he just passed this new Inflation Reduction Act. You've heard that? Let me tell you what the Inflation Reduction Act does. It takes about $400 billion out of your pockets in new taxes, and it gives that $400 billion to this Green New Deal industrial complex at a time when the economy is slowing, inflation is rising, and our 401ks are crashing. It gives your money to this Green New Deal industrial complex, and they're going to spend it in a way that are going to increase the cost of energy in America. And you say, well, why? You ask them, why do you want to do that? And they say, to lower the world's temperatures. And so then you say, how, by doing this, passing this bill, how much is it going to lower the world's temperatures? And they go silent. You know why? Because the answer is zero. It's zero. Because while we're making all of these sacrifices as Americans, China, India, Indonesia, Sub-Saharan Africa are not reducing their CO2 emissions a scintilla of a degree. So what is the point? Now, I'm not against wind, solar, or hydrogen, or geothermal. Any form of efficient form of energy that the American entrepreneurs can come up with that can support itself on its own 2 feet. I'm for that. But we cannot run the most powerful economy in all of human history without fossil fuels. Not today and not tomorrow. And as you've heard me say before, the president's energy policy is wind, solar, and wishful thinking. Well, wishful thinking doesn't get it. My car doesn't run off unicorn urine and pixie dust. It takes oil and gas. And we right here in Louisiana, joining with our friends in Texas, can produce enough natural gas and send it to Europe so that Europe could tell Putin to kiss their rosy red elbow. But the President of the United States won't let us do it, and it makes no sense to me. And that's why, frankly, his poll numbers, the American people aren't morons. They figured this out. And that's why the president's poll numbers are on a journey to the center of the earth, because they figured it out. They're telling me, well, shut up. I'll answer one more. Let me get this gentleman.
I saw in the news today, the only part of our military complex that was up to par was nuclear energy, nuclear weapons, and the U.S. Marine Corps.
Yes,
Everything else is piss poor condition. What are we going to do about that?
You know, I don't know why this is. If I make it to heaven, I'm going to ask. But there's some people in this world, they're not sick. They're not mixed up. They're not confused. It's not that their mama or their daddy didn't love them enough. They're just evil. And some of them run countries. I'm talking about Putin in Russia. I'm talking about Xi Jinping in China. I don't hate the people of China. I've been there many times. But I don't like their form of government. And President Xi Jinping is ruthless. I wouldn't turn my back on him if he were 2 days dead. Another one is the Ayatollah in Iran. And what these people understand, these despots, is strength. Weakness invites the wolves. I don't know why. I wish it wasn't the case. I wish we could sit down and solve all the world's problems with hugs and hot cocoa, but you can't with these people. Weakness invites the wolves. And we're going to have to spend more money than we've ever spent in the past on our military. And that is just a natural fact. We did that in the first 4 years that I was in D.C. when my party controlled the House and the Senate and the presidency. We strengthened the military. President Biden's new proposed budget cuts the military to the cheers and applause of Xi Jinping in China. And you know who's learning right now the lesson that I just talked about? Our friends in Europe. Our friends in Europe. We have to defend Europe. And I remember when President Trump said, you guys in Europe promised to spend 2% of your gross domestic product on defense, but you hadn't been doing it. We've had to spend the money. Well, I think you're going to see a change in Europe because Vladimir Putin is on Europe's doorstep. Okay, let's take pictures.
All right, good job, Hudson.
I have a question.
You got a question?
Wait, he's got a question.
You got it. Give me one. You got any more? Here, you want to ask me a question?
Sure.
How are you?
Good.
Good. I'm glad you're good. Let's go take some pictures.
That's my grandson.
All right, with cameraman Jason Serenier, I'm Martin False here at Copeland's. Thanks for joining us. We wanted to give you sort of a unabridged speech by Senator John Kennedy. As you can tell, he's a very colorful individual and off the cuff, really colorful. So we enjoyed bringing it to you, and we'll have more on HTV.